Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Deb Rivera.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone is having a great day. My name is Deb Rivera. I work in the communications team for data.census.gov, and I will be the host for today's webinar, data.census.gov Essentials for Beginners. Today, you will all learn the basics on how to start your data search on the Census Bureau's main data search platform, data.census.gov. I want to first thank my Census Bureau colleagues for joining me and helping to support our speaker for today, and also for making this webinar possible. Now, I will be handing things off to our presenter in just a moment, but first I want to go over a few housekeeping items. We would like to encourage participants to use the Q&A panel in WebEx to submit questions throughout the presentation. To submit your questions, just please make sure to use the All Panelists option from the drop-down menu. That way all of our panelists can see your question. Now, I will be using the chat panel to send helpful information, including instructions, URLs, and contact information. So again, for questions, please use the Q&A panel and make sure to select the All Panelists option, and use the chat panel for helpful links and other information. At the end of the webinar, we will be taking your questions through the WebEx audio line. For this portion, we will ask participants to use the raise hand icon in WebEx to indicate if you have a question. You will then be allowed to come off mute to ask your question. Just remember, when we call your name, you will need to unmute yourself on your end. A quick note, the Q&A session will focus on the platform, data.census.gov. We will not be able to go in depth to address questions on other census products, the data collection process, disclosure avoidance, or the methodology. Now, as always, we are recording the webinar today, and all of the materials for this training will be available through the Census Academy website. Thank you again for joining us, and now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Maria Valdesera. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, Deb. Hi, everyone. And again, welcome to our webinar that's going to be talking about some essentials for beginners who are just getting started with our data platform, data.census.gov. My name is Maria Valdesera. I am a program analyst, also in the communication side of the Census Bureau. So I just wanted to go over the outline of what we're going to be covering today. We are going to do some live demonstration, and I'm going to be covering just some tips and tricks for getting started with the site. We'll be covering the single search, advanced search, and then I'll go into some mapping. Then I'll go over some resources for learning more about data.census.gov and getting training, on other ways, to dive deeper into the site. And then we'll wrap up with some questions. So first, I wanted to just cover where exactly the data on data.census.gov is coming from. So that's coming from our application programming interface, or API. Some of you may be familiar with it, but that is where we pull the data from, our data services. It's coming from, all different parts of the Census Bureau. So it is machine readable when you are querying directly to the API. It's really good for using it in dashboards or apps. And like we will see, it is also being pulled into sites like data.census.gov. It'll provide you with single or multiple pieces of data, so you can make an API query for, just one variable in a large table. It does include more data sets, and you can easily make bulk queries with the API. So if you are familiar with that, that is where a lot of our data is coming from. So we have the API, we'll query through data.census.gov, and that will return formatted data that is a lot easier to use. It is more user-friendly. It provides you with a lot of different visualizations, so it's not as rudimentary. So you're providing tables, maps, and visualizations. You basically just plug in what you want the site to pull from the API, and the queries are essentially made for you. And so there's no need to learn how to use the API. We're trying to make the site as user-friendly as possible, so that you can find the data that you're looking for. Now, in terms of data availability with data.census.gov, the earliest that we have to offer is from the 2000 decennial census. So we have different availability of data based on the data sets that you're looking at, right? So for the decennial census, we have 2000, 2010, and have just wrapped up releasing 2020 census data. We also have the American Community Survey that goes back to 2010 on the site, and we have the most recently available ACS one-year estimates for 2023, with the 5-year estimates being released next month. And then we also have some economic data. The earliest that goes back to is 2012. So this is not the full matrix. This actually needs to be a little bit updated, but the link at the bottom of the slide provides you with a full breakdown of all of the data sets and the years that are available with data.census.gov. This is just showing you some of the geographies that are available with data.census.gov and with census data in general. So you can see kind of how they nest within each other. I just thought this was a good visualization to show. So you see that it goes all the way down to census block level. Keep in mind that census block data is only going to be available with the decennial census, but then the ACS has block group level data and above, and then you see all of these other types of geographies that branch off from those, nesting geographies. So there's a lot to offer on the site. I did also just want to go over the topics that you'll see with the American Community Survey, which is our largest survey available on the site. So this breaks it down into social, demographic, economic, and housing characteristics. So these are not necessarily all of the topics you would be able to choose on the site, but these are topics that are contained within the tables that you'll see from the American Community Survey. So there's a lot to offer. And again, that is offered yearly. We have 1-year and 5-year data set estimates. And those are just, this was an extension of the long form decennial census. If some of you are aware, we changed that into the American Community Survey so that data users would be able to get that more detailed data on a yearly basis instead of waiting once every 10 years.
Maria, this is Deb. I
Yes.
do apologize for interrupting you. I'm just noticing some messages that are coming in saying that
Sure.
some folks can't see the screen. I know we're not in practice mode. I can see your slides.
Okay.
Perhaps this has something to do with the way that folks are joining WebEx. I know that there's an option to join via the browser, and there's an option to join via the desktop app. I believe the desktop app would be the option. So maybe, I don't know if those folks that are having issues viewing the slides, if you wouldn't mind disconnecting for a moment and then trying to reconnect using the desktop app. I believe that will solve the issue.
Thank you so much, Deb. And yeah, apologies for the technical difficulties. If you are unable to join, we'll also have a recording of this and we'll provide the slides through Census Academy as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you're able, join through the desktop app rather than the web version of WebEx. Yeah, thanks so much, Deb, for pointing that out. So I'm just going to keep going and hopefully that issue will be fixed. I did also want to mention that the ACS 1-year and ACS 5-year estimates are going to be available. I can definitely go into this in detail a little bit more, but essentially the 1-year estimates are going to be available with populations of 65,000 or more, and the 5-year estimates will cover most geographies that fall under that category. So for smaller geographies, smaller counties, smaller towns and cities that fall under that 65,000 population threshold, that will not be available with the 1-year estimates, but again, it will be available with the 5-year. So just wanted to point that out before we jumped into our search. So first is the single search bar. There are two main ways to search for data on the site. The first, as I mentioned, is that search bar that if you have used the site in the past, you will be able to, recognize it's right on the main landing page. So when it comes to the single search bar, I tend to have the mantra that simpler is better. So with the single search, I tend to type in just a topic, a geography, sometimes, a topic and a geography, as we'll see in one of our examples. If you're looking for data from a particular year, you can type that in, or if you happen to know the table ID or a specific industry or economic code, then that's usually how I like to complete a single search. It doesn't exactly work like Google, where you can ask it a question and it'll return data or tables back to you. Again, I find that those simpler keywords and phrases really is going to give you the best results. So with this first set of examples, I'm going to show you 3 ways to use the single search. The first is poverty in Maryland. So we're just going to use that single search bar right at the top. And then we'll also show you how to do a little bit more of a complex search with the single search bar by looking at some data profiles from Boise City, Idaho. And then I'm going to use the single search to show you how to find a geography profile, which is a great way to get a lot of high-level data points and see some visualizations for a particular geography. So I'm going to dive into data.census.gov now. Again, this is the main landing page. I am using Google Chrome. Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge are our preferred browsers if you have them. If you do not, that is completely okay. It does work with other browsers. But those are the ones that we, say that are preferred. So I'm going to start off by just typing poverty in Maryland into my search bar. I'm not going to worry about any of these drop downs or suggestions. I'm just going to click on the magnifying glass icon, and I'll be able to see that the screen is populating with some data. So I just wanted to kind of briefly go over what exactly we're all seeing on this screen. So if you look to the left of the page, that is going to be all about filters. So you can see that from our search, we picked up a poverty filter and then the Maryland filter. You can see that there are 2 lock icons next to them. So if I click on this question mark icon, I can see a little bit about what exactly that means. So you can see that we have filter categories that are filtered out by geographies, topics, surveys, years, codes, and tables, and those are all color coded. Then we have the filter actions. So the lock icon indicates that a filter was added dynamically as part of our search, and we can see that that is, based on our single search. And then to remove that filter, we would basically have to start a new one. So instead of poverty in Maryland, maybe we could look at education in Virginia. We just type that in and that would start a new search and that would remove our filters. We also have the filter label with the X next to it, and that indicates that a filter was added manually and can be removed without starting a new search. So we don't have any of those added yet. In order to add those types of filters, we'll use the filter panel on the left side of the screen. This will also serve as a preview for what the advanced search looks like. So we'll be able to take a look at that in just a few moments. But towards the center of the screen, you'll see that we have a featured statistic that is looking at, poverty for all people in Maryland. We can see that that statistic is 9.5%, and we can see that it's coming from the 2023 ACS 1-year estimates. So we can click on view this result, and that'll take us to a table that has this statistic, as well as maybe other related statistics that we're interested in. Now for the tables, this will be provided with the most recent data available first, and then it'll go down further. So you can see that there are 241 tables available. We can switch the view to either it defaults to 10 tables at a time, but we can also switch it to 25 or 50. And then again, we can scroll down and see, what tables are available based on the filters that we selected. So we also have on the right side of the screen is another preview of our geography profile. So again, we'll get into those in just a moment. But we also have a related searches section where it again goes over maybe some, other related topics for the geography that we are looking for. I also wanted to mention that we have this view all 24 products. In some cases, depends on the actual availability of the table, but you can see that it varies based on the table that you're looking at. But if we click on the plus sign here, this will give us just a preview of what we can expect with this table. So you can see all of the data availability. It's up to 2023 ACS 1 year. That goes all the way back to the 2010 1-year estimates. And then with the 5-year estimates, that is available back from 2012, and then goes up to 2022. So, if you want to look at a specific year and data product, you can click on any of these links. For now, though, I am just going to select S1701. And that's just our poverty status table. Now, if you want to see a bigger view of this table, you can click on the arrows next to the filters and the results panel, and that'll just make the table fill up a bit better. So as you can see, we have information for the total population of Maryland, those below the poverty level, and then finally the percent below poverty level. And that's where we see that 9.5% statistic. So that's how you'll use the single search bar, and then just a brief overview of, what you'll see when you pull up a search. The second search that I wanted to do was looking for a specific data set within the American Community Survey, and those are our data profiles, which are another great way to get some high-level data points. So I'm just going to change my search, and I'm going to do ACS, DP, and that's what those those data profiles start with their table IDs. And then I'm going to specify Boise City, Idaho, because there's also a Boise County, Idaho. I'm also specifying ACS because there are also tables that start with DP that comes from the decennial census. So instead of, say, DP02 from the ACS, there's also a DP2 from the decennial census. It's not the biggest deal in the world if both sources came up, but since I know that I want these ACS tables, I'm going to just specify that in my search. So I'm going to click on that magnifying glass icon. If we open up the results again, we can see that that easily came up for Boise City with all of these data profiles. And again, that covers housing, economic, demographic, and social characteristics for Boise City. So you can kind of browse through, especially these are great if you want a lot of different data points, that cover, those broader topics. But then I also wanted to go over finally with our last single search example, just the geo profiles. So to get to the main landing page of data.census.gov, you'll click on the United States Census Bureau logo in the top left corner of the page. And we were looking for Pima County, Arizona. So I'm just going to start typing in Pima County, and you can see that this is a preview of the geo profile that is coming up. So this is a great way of indicating that we have those available. So I'm just going to click on the Pima County, Arizona profile that has the map there. That'll take you directly to the profile page. So you'll see a map of Pima County. You'll also see, just some geographic information about it, what, other counties is bordered by, the square mileage. And then if you also want to share this profile, you can do so by clicking on the share profile button. And so that will provide you the provide the ability to share via social media, if you want to send it via email, or if you just want to copy the link that is available, we can copy that directly and you can, use it as a bookmark, or if you, add it to another browser, things like that, that is always available. And so if we scroll down here, we can see this is a great example of how we pull from the API through data.census.gov. This is pulling from multiple different sources from Census Bureau data. So this is looking at decennial census data, American Community Survey data, as well as some of our economic data. So that, again, is giving you some high-level data points. It also provides you with the table IDs and the source that it comes from, so you can click on any of these links and it'll take you directly to those tables. If you scroll down further, you'll see that the page populates with these headings where you can go and click on, whatever you're interested in, and then the site will take you to that part of the page. We also have population pyramids. This, for example, is looking at some age by sex data. So there are really a lot of great visualizations here. And again, you can see what tables that this is being displayed from. And so if you wanted to look at this a little bit, more in depth in a table view, then you would be able to do so directly from the geo profile. So it's a great way to, get those high level data points, see some visualizations, as well as have links available to larger tables and more information directly from the geo profile. So definitely wanted to share that with everyone. So the second way to search is the advanced search filters, which I, kind of briefly touched on when we looked at the first example. So this is more of a guided approach. We do consider it to be more precise than the single search because it includes all available search options. So if you see a chevron next to a, in this case, a topic, that means that there are more detailed options available. And then if you see a check mark, that's where you can make your final selection. This is also great if you are selecting multiple geographies at once. So, and I'm going to have an example where I show that as well. But I tend to, especially if you're newer to the site and you might be a little bit frustrated by how the single search is working, try it and check out the advanced search because that allows you to select all of the filters that you need to find the data that you're looking for. So with that, I'm going to show 3 examples from the advanced search as well. So we'll do an educational attainment search for all counties in Ohio. Then I'm going to show you how to search for a particular product from the decennial census, which is the demographic and housing characteristics file for Denver, Colorado. And then I'm going to show you how to kind of combine the elements of using the single search by searching for table S1901, which is an income table for multiple different geographies in the site. So, and within the advanced search. So we're going to kind of do a little combination in that last example. But first up is the educational attainment tables for all counties in Ohio. So I'm going to go back to the main landing page and I'm going to select the advanced search, which is located right underneath the single search bar. So here's where we'll see that filter panel that is available. I tend to start with the geographies that are available just because it does inform the other availability of other filters. So for example, if a certain geographic level isn't available for, say, economic data, and I select those geographies, when I go down to the surveys, the economic tables will not come up. So that's why I usually like to select my geographies first because it'll inform the availability of other filters. But we'll go to the county filter. This will give us a list of all of the states. So I'm going to select Ohio. And then I'll just select all counties within Ohio. You can certainly select individual counties, multiples. If you just wanted to do, say, the first 4 counties as an example, you could do that as well. But I'm just going to do the all counties option first. And then we're going to select our educational attainment table, our educational attainment variable or filter rather, and that will be provided under the topics filter. We'll go to education, and then we can see educational attainment is available right there. So those two filters have been added to my search. I'm just going to wait for the filter panel to load just so I can double check that those are the ones that I'm looking for. And yes, we can see those two filters added there. You can also have the option to clear the filters, or you can also search for one if you are looking for something specific and you're not really finding it. But once we've added those filters, we'll click on the search button in the bottom right corner of the screen. And here's where we're going to pull up all of our educational attainment tables. So I'm going to select S1501, which is looking at educational attainment using the counties in Ohio. Now I'm going to collapse this filter and results panel just so everybody can see this message. So this is not an error message. It just means that the table is too large to display based on the size of the table and the number of geographies that we selected. So there are a few things that you can do. You can adjust your filters to create a smaller table. You can download the table, or I know that I have a pretty good chance of opening this table anyway. Since I only did all counties within one state. So I'm going to open the table anyway, and there you can see that it opens just fine. I will say that this will not work for every single search that you do. You know, it depends on the browser that you're using as well as the number of geographies. So if you were, say, looking at all counties within the entire US, I probably would recommend either breaking up your search or downloading the table. You'll still be able to get the same data, it'll just be in a different format. But that is how you will use that advanced search. So it's just that point and click method that I mentioned. The next example is looking at how to select a specific data set for, in this case, it'll be for the decennial census. So we're going to be looking at this with Denver, Colorado. That'll actually be under the place filter. So the places that we have designated, those include most cities, towns, and then we have a geography called census designated places. If you do not find that type of geography that you're looking for in the place filter, you can also look for it in the county subdivision filter. That'll also include things like towns, townships, districts, things of that nature. So if you're looking at those types of geographies, they will either be in the place or county subdivision filter. I know that Denver is going to be in that place filter, so I'm going to select Denver, Colorado. You can also use the search bar at the top of the list to search for a specific geography instead of scrolling through the entire list. So I'm just going to search for Denver and then select Denver City, Colorado. And so now I'm looking for the demographic and housing characteristics file that comes from the decennial census. So I'm going to scroll past topics and go directly to surveys. So that's where I see decennial census, and this will provide me with all of the available files or programs, or in this case, data sets that are available with the geography that I selected. So I'm going to just select demographic and housing characteristics, and that'll pull up all of the available tables from the DHC. So that is going to be available. We have our two filters added here. Then if I click on the search button, that's where it's just showing that featured statistic from the first table here, which is the total population from the 2020 decennial census. And then this provides it, since it's all coming from the same year, it'll provide it in alphabetical order. So again, you can switch the view to 25 or 50 and scroll through the entire list if you need to. But this is just going to provide you with basic demographic and housing data. And so if you selected on, say, table P1, that is where you'll be able to see that featured statistic that is available. So now jumping into our last advanced search exercise, I'm also going to cover some of the tools that are available in the table view, but this is where we are going to kind of combine the elements of using the advanced search and the single search. So it does require me to add 4 different types of geographies. So first up, we're going to select just the state of Texas. So I'm going to scroll down pretty far on the list and select Texas. And I'm kind of drilling down into one specific area of Texas just so everybody knows. But next I'm going to go to county and I'm going to find Tarrant County. So I'm going to go down to Texas again. I'm going to search for Tarrant County and then add that to my search. Then I'm going to be looking for Fort Worth, which is going to also be in the place filter. So I'm going to let this filter panel load. We'll go to the place filter, scroll down again to Texas. And then I'm going to search for Fort Worth, and there's Fort Worth City right there. And then lastly, I'm going to look for a zip code tabulation area. For those who are not as familiar, zip code tabulation areas are just aerial representations of USPS zip codes. So there's not really a one-to-one ratio in terms of some zip codes, USPS zip codes might not be available as a ZICTA, but we do have a lot of crossover available with the numbers that are available. Sometimes it just doesn't, there's not full geographic coverage with ZICTAs like there are with USPS zip codes. And I'd be happy to provide more information on that if anybody is interested. But we're going to we're going to go to zip code tabulation area. Then we're going to go down again to Texas. And we are looking for a specific ZICTA. So I'm just going to type in 76104. And we can see that that is available as well. So we're going to add that. And that is going to be the last geography that we add. So now I'm just going to, since I'm only looking for one table, if I happen to know the table ID, one thing that, will just make it a little bit easier instead of selecting, say, an income and poverty filter, and scrolling through all of the tables, if I happen to know the table ID, in this case, it'll be S1901. I'm going to ignore this drop down here, and I'm just going to click on the search button in the bottom right corner of the screen like I did before. And this is the only table that's going to come up. So this is, again, looking at just income in the past 12 months for 2023. So one thing to note as well is since this has larger geographies, it will default to the 2023 one-year estimates. Since we are looking at smaller geos that are not available with the one-year estimates, we can use that drop down here to view the most recent 5-year estimates, which is coming from 2022. So once we do that, we can see that it is now available for Tarrant County, as well as the state of Texas, Fort Worth City, and then finally our ZICTA, or zip code tabulation area. And that is looking at households, families, married couple families, and non-family households, and looking at the different income ranges, as well as the mean and median income. So I did want to just briefly go over some of the features that you can find in the table ribbon. If you want to view the table notes, that is available here. It provides you with, technical documentation, methodology, as well as any changes that have been made to the, in this case, it'll be like income, and then it'll provide you with an explanation of any of the symbols that are found within the table. This is just another way to add filters. You can also do so in the filter panel on the left side of the screen. I tend to gravitate more towards this since I'm, more familiar with it. And it just visually works a little bit better than the filters that are available up top here. This is just another way to change the data set or the vintage, but again, you can do that through the drop down here as well. If you want to hide the margin of error columns, you can also click on the margin of error button, and that will just collapse all of the margin of error columns that are provided in the table. If you click on more tools, that is where you'll be able to either export or download some of the table data. So the Excel export is more user friendly. It's definitely more readable format. It'll provide you with an information tab as well as the data, which is shown basically exactly how it is on the site. It's formatted in practically the same way, just in an Excel format. The CSV download is a little bit more compact, but it still provides you with the variables in the rows and the geographies in the columns. And it will not have that information tab that the Excel export does. And then we also have the zip button that is going to provide you with a machine readable flat file through Excel where you can see the geographic identifiers or geo IDs. It provides you with the variable codes as well for each of the variables present within the table. So that's more, again, better for machine reading. And if you're doing a larger download, like we see, you know, if you're looking at, say, all counties in the US, it will download to a zip file. We also have the cite button, which is available to create a citation with these various different different styles for citations. So you can copy those directly from the site if you are using census data for, you know, an academic paper or, you know, a news story, something like that. If we wanted to share this, again, it's the same type of share button that we saw with the geo profile. So again, social media, or if you want to copy this link directly from the site, you can do so. For any of my API users, we also have the data link for this particular API query that you would find with this table. So this provides you with the data link as well as the metadata link where you can view information on the actual data set itself. This is a newer feature that we have that we're, you know, happy to show for anybody who is an API user. You can just take this and it'll let you, it basically has that direct query to the API. And then finally, the map button. We're going to get into that in just a second, but this is how you'll be able to view the mapping of the data. You can also click on the Maps tab that is available in the table ribbon, or right above the table ribbon, rather. So that is just how to see some of the features that we have, as well as how to search with the advanced search. Finally, with our last example for our demo, I wanted to go over how to find race and ethnicity data from table B02001 for all census tracts in Wayne County, Michigan. So this is going to be a similar process of using the advanced search, but then we're just going to get into the mapping just a little bit. So I'm going to go to the advanced search right here, and we are going to select census tract, scroll down to Michigan. Then I'm just going to search for Wayne County just to speed things up a little bit instead of scrolling. And then I'm going to select all census tracts within Wayne County, Michigan. So then I'm going to scroll down to topics and select race and ethnicity. And I'm just going to select the general race and ethnicity filter and hit search. So I'm going to switch my view to 50 because I am looking for a particular table. This is just our race table from the American Community Survey. And it's, again, going to show that the table is too large to display. I am just going to open it up anyway. And so you can see that these are just the general racial categories that are available for the total population in each census tract. So say you want to map the Black or African American alone population, you can go to the Maps tab or the Map button, again, in the table ribbon there. And this will provide you a map of Wayne County. So this will provide you, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here using the plus and the minus sign. You can zoom in and out. But this is just going to provide you with the total population for each of the census tracts here. You can see how it's broken down through the legend, and what census tracts have those larger amounts of people within them. But if I click on the drop down here, this is where I can select the variables that are present within my table. So I'm just going to select Black or African American alone. And so then I can see the census tracts that have that higher concentration of the Black or African American population. It'll also provide me, again, with that updated variable at the top here, and then it'll, show me how it all is broken down in the legend. So that's how you would change the variables. We also have the select tool. So that allows you to draw a shape around a particular area that has not been added to your map. And say you want to get, some neighboring census tracts on your map and see how that stacks up to the Wayne County ones. That is where you can draw a shape and then add those. Anything that touches that shape will then be added to your map. You can also select them individually, but when working with something small like census tracts, that can be tedious. So that's why we selected those, or we added that select tool to make it easier to select a larger number of geographies at once. I also wanted to go over the year button. This is another way to change the year of data, so you can kind of see how data might have changed over time. We also have the base map button that provides you with just a different look of the map. So this provides us with a basic base map to start off. We also have a detailed base map. And then we also have, if you don't want any base map at all, then you can get rid of that and it'll just be the actual map itself. I tend to gravitate towards the basic base map, makes the colors pop a little bit more and still provides us with some geographical and topographical information. We also have the boundaries button, so that lets you overlay different types of geographies on top of one another. If we wanted to see what, in this case, places were within Wayne County, we can get a sense for that. And then it'll also provide you with the boundary lines. It's not going to provide you with data, but it will provide you with those boundary lines. And then I also wanted to cover how you can change the data classes. So that is available through the classes button. You can change what is being shown within the legend. So you can change the number of data classes and have, them break up into any of these, different intervals that are available. And then I also just wanted to mention the print button. So that allows you to download this view as a PDF. So you'll be able to see a view of the map itself, as well as the map legend, the variable, and the associated table notes. So this, if you don't have screenshotting software, or if you just like a nice snapshot of the map itself, that is now available in a PDF form, so it's easy to print as well. So I didn't cover all of the mapping features. If you do want more information on what is available, I'd be happy to share it. If you get in contact with us, we also do have a workshop that goes directly into mapping and goes really into a deep dive of all of the features that we have. But with that being said, I did just want to mention how you can provide your feedback and any questions to us. So you can, check out data.census.gov, explore it a bit, and then you can provide any comments or questions to census.data@census.gov. Also, if you are interested in economic data, we have, some webinars that were just posted in the last couple of months that go into that more in depth. I know that I only covered the ACS and decennial census today. So if you are interested, we do have a page that goes into that type of data as well. Also, if you have not signed up for data.census.gov updates, that is available through this link, as well as the link that Deb is putting in the chat. We also have a QR code, so that's where you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, where we go over all of the recent changes and fixes to the site. If we have any video tutorials or other upcoming webinars, that is also going to be provided in the newsletter. And then I just mentioned those workshops, but if you'd like to get more information on that, that link is also available via the link and the QR code. So we have a basics class where I go even more in depth, as well as advanced and mapping classes for data.census.gov. So those are more hands-on, smaller training that, we limit the capacity to 50 participants per session. So it is much smaller, more intimate. You can definitely ask, more in-depth questions and things like that. It usually runs about 2 to 2.5 hours. And then we also have classes for our microdata access tool, as well as the Census API. I also wanted to plug our customer satisfaction survey. So that is available directly on data.census.gov. I don't know if anybody saw the banner that was right at the top of the screen there, but we are, ramping up our survey. We just launched it a few weeks ago. So if you would like to, help us build a better data.census.gov and really get your feedback in, please feel free. It only takes about 5 to 10 minutes to fill it out. So we'd really love to hear your thoughts on the site and ways to improve. And with that, I am going to hand it back over to you, Deb.
Great, thank you, Maria. All right, so in just a few moments, we will begin our question and answer session. As a reminder, today we will be taking questions over the WebEx audio line. So if you have a question, please queue up by using the raise hand icon that should be located next to your name in the participant panel or along the bottom of the WebEx screen. Just remember also, once we call your name, you will need to unmute yourself before you ask your question. Now, while you all gather your questions and start queuing up, I would like to take a moment to invite you all to share your thoughts about today's webinar through an evaluation survey. Your feedback helps us design future training sessions and also lets us know how we can improve our webinars. The link to the evaluation is actually going to open up in a separate browser once you log out of the webinar. Please don't close it out. Just take a moment to fill it out and let us know how we did today. Now, if you have any questions remaining after our session concludes, please feel free to reach out to any of the email inboxes listed here. If you are a member of the public, please reach out to the Center for Enterprise Dissemination at either one of those two inboxes, and members of the media may contact the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. So now, while we wait for questions to come in, I'm just going to turn it over briefly to Maria. I believe she has some additional resources to share with us.
Yes, thanks, Deb. I just wanted to reiterate that we have a lot of great information on our resources page that is available at the link provided on the slide, as well as if you click on the help button directly on data.census.gov, that'll take you to our resources page where you'll find even more information, how-to materials, upcoming releases, recorded webinars and video tutorials, and much more. And then finally, yes, if you would like to email any comments or questions to us, the best way to get in contact is through census.data@census.gov. And then if you have any specific training requests, you can get in contact with us through ced.cedsci.outreach@census.gov. That is going to be specifically for data.census.gov, the microdata access tool, and the Census API. But if you have other questions about any other, census data tools, the best way to, get assistance with that is to contact our data dissemination specialists, or DDSs. So you can request a free data training for your organization. They also have a lot of great resources that are available through their data gems as well as their available courses. And you can interact with them via webinars. So you can learn, again, a lot about the other data releases and data tools that are available. If you would like to get in contact with them, their email address is census.askdata@census.gov, or you can give them a call at 1-844-ASK-DATA. And I'm just going to leave that webinar slide up now, and then we can start taking some questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maria. Okay, it looks like we have some questions in the queue. Can we please open up Simon's line? And Simon, you may have to unmute yourself on your end before you ask your question. Simon, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good, doing pretty well today. Thank you for this
Excellent.
webinar. The main question I had is touched on a little bit, but I work for a regional planning commission in rural Wisconsin, and we pretty much exclusively, we have one county over 40,000 people, so we always use the 5-year estimates.
Yes.
And the way we try to explain them to people is we always try to say, it's always going to be a delay. We talk about, it's the universe 2018 to 2022. How confident do you feel in explaining how that period is? And are there any changes going forward planned for how that data is more useful, or like making 1-year estimates for rural areas?
That would be a great question for our ACS staff. I will say I know that the collection period, what I usually explain it is, the 1-year estimates, using 2022 as an example, would be 1-year estimates collected between January 1st, 2022 and December 31st, 2022, whereas the 5-year estimates would be January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2022. So that's usually how I explain it, when I do my longer form workshops and things like that. I don't know if there are any plans on making the smaller geographies available. I know there's also like case by case things that sometimes come into it too. I'd be happy to provide you with the ACS contact. They're a really great resource as well. They, are really responsive. So we can definitely, I don't know, Deb, if you can put that into the chat, but that would be a great thing to follow up with them on.
That would be great, because the big thing that comes down to for us has housing stuff. Because when you're working with numbers that go back to 2018, the numbers just make no sense, and people look at us like we're crazy for bringing those numbers in sometimes.
Right, and there's definitely information too with like the technical documentation and the methodology that is available just through census.gov/ACS that you could also take a look at. Because I know that it's not necessarily like an aggregate of each year. I know that they have a method where they go into it a little bit further, but we are on a 1-year delay, so 2023 data will be coming out next month.
And I actually had one more question for technical.
Sure.
So you talked, sometimes you mentioned like the drop downs weren't working, and you have to refresh the page. We deal with that exact same issue quite often. And do you know why that's happening? Are there plans to make that better, or is that kind of just baked into how the census is working?
No, with the drop downs, we are still gathering feedback on that. My understanding is that it is a function of the site where it's not necessarily that they won't work, right? It just that it will remove. I didn't actually mention this, and I probably should have. If you select those drop down, like when I did the income table S1901, that will remove the geographies that you selected. Again, we know that a lot of data users don't want that to happen. So we're working with our developers to see if they can fix that, or at least make it more obvious as to what exactly is going on. Because I do get a lot of feedback saying, it removed all my geos. What's going on? It's like, just ignore the drop downs. But yeah, that's a great bit of feedback that we get quite often.
Okay, well, good to know that you're aware of that at least.
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much for that question. And can we please open up Betsy's line? Betsy, you might need to unmute yourself on your end. We can't hear you.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. I have a couple questions. I'm really happy to hear that you have more training. I'm wondering, is the training open to anyone? Is it, can an individual request training, or is it just for organizational groups? Is there a charge for the training? And also, I'm very interested in vintage data, and I'm wondering if there's a link to vintage data from the data.census site.
That is great. Okay, so first off, let me just say, with the workshops, we do have it open to individuals. You can sign up via the workshop link that I think Deb put in the chat, and then we also have in the slides. When it comes to the individual, or excuse me, the data request or the requested training, we tend to look at we tend to schedule it for specific organizations so that we can, I've done some on how to access economic data or how to access a specific, data set within our microdata tool, things like that. We can always set up a call. If you're an individual, you can always email us and we can set up a call where we can go over things individually. Definitely no cost to you. All of this is free. So yeah, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you want something tailored, you can always send it to that email address, especially if you are looking at, to provide it for a larger group within your, business or organization. But if you just need help finding something specific for yourself, you can always just shoot us an email. We can set up a Teams call. And then, I'm sorry, what was the vintage question? So we do have, we have the population estimates program that I think would probably be more to what you would need. Those have the 1-year vintages that go back a bit further. That's not, a lot of it, that is not on data.census.gov, unfortunately. That is just going to be available through the main census.gov website. We haven't really been able to get a lot of that PEP data over. We're hoping to in the future. But I would definitely just go to data.census.gov and look up population estimates, and then you'll be able to download the data sets, by vintage. So did I cover everything in that question?
It was a fabulous webinar, and you answered my questions, and I just think this is terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for attending.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that question, Betsy. All right, let's go ahead and open up Eric's line, please. And Eric, you might need to unmute yourself. Okay, Lisa, do you want to try to unmute Rebecca's line, and we can come back to Eric in a moment? Okay, Rebecca, you should be able to unmute yourself in the next couple of seconds.
I sent the request to Rebecca to unmute.
Okay, all right. Well, while we wait, Rebecca, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please go ahead. But in the meantime, I just wanted to go over a couple of other questions that we received via the Q&A. All right, the first question.
Oh wait, I think somebody's unmuted.
Rebecca?
Yep, Rebecca.
There we go.
Okay,
Hello.
we can hear you.
Thanks. The webinar was great today. Is it possible to over-engineer your selections and end up with an Excel sheet full of data that is meaningless? And that might be a loaded question. I was looking for a particular set of business owners and whether or not they were male or female and where they were in which county. And what I exported to Excel, this was obviously using the specific search, gave me line items that look like they were overlapping in nature. And I wondered if it was possible to go a little too crazy and not get anything meaningful.
It's definitely possible. I tend to, and it depends. The economic data is a whole other beast, I will just say. That's why I didn't really want to cover it too much in today's webinar. But I do tend to see sometimes instances where people have selected, 4, 5, 6 filters. Not saying that you've done that, but sometimes, yeah, the certain combination of filters kind of does also sometimes lead to unexpected results. And so it might have been an Excel issue. It maybe sounds like maybe you weren't getting necessarily the table that you needed just based off the filters that were selected. So I would maybe play around with it, maybe try and simplifying your search a little bit, and then feel free to reach out to us with the details, and we can see if we can find a solution, or if it might be like a defect within the site, because sometimes it's not user error, sometimes it's on our end, and we do have a lot of data users that bring something up and we're like, oh no, that's a defect, we need to get that fixed. So yeah, I would definitely play around with it and see, and then reach out to us if you're still having trouble.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, this is Eric.
Oh, hi,
Yes.
Eric. Hello.
Yes. Question I had was regarding the presentation of data with regard to some of your data when I'm trying to do a time comparison.
Sure.
Going back, some of it is numerical and some of it's percentage. I'm wondering do I just have to do the math and work the numbers out as the estimate for the percentage, or do you have the actual numerical data available?
Yeah, that is a great question. So it does depend on the table. I know that some tables, especially with the American Community Survey, they try not to change variables and table layouts as much as they can, but sometimes just it has to work out that way. If a table does not provide percentages, like I know a lot of decennial census tables do not provide percentages, then you will just have to calculate that manually. And that's why we tend to always provide at least the total population, whether it be with tables that provide the numeric value, or if there are tables that provide with percent value. So yeah, the short answer is, unfortunately, we're not able to manipulate the tables in that way on the site, but you can always, reach out and provide feedback to either us or ACS with that, or if, you need help with the calculations, we can help out with that as well. Or the ACS staff can kind of give you some guidance on what the best table is to use, things like that.
Well, most times a lot of the research that I'll use census data for is over time comparison.
Right.
So from a point in time when we had this many residents to now. So just a lot of it, I really appreciate the information, but just knowing that, as a user, that is one of the big things for me, is that I'll use it as a reference of change.
Right. And yes, I know that we're starting to introduce more, at least visualizations on data that have it change over time, because that's one thing that I know we've had other data users ask about is, can I see multiple years at once, things like that. And yeah, that's unfortunately not something that we're able to offer currently, but you can always select individual years, download them, and kind of see, maybe combine data sets, or, manipulate it in Excel and see those different time comparisons. But yeah, on the site currently, there is no way to do that, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, wonderful. So it looks like those are all of the questions that we received. Those were fantastic questions. Thank you all so much. And I'd like to take a moment to thank you all for joining us on this webinar today. We really hope that this was helpful. I will say, please remember to check back the Census Academy website. We will be posting the recording of this presentation as well as the PowerPoint slide deck, and that should be available within the next week or so. And also, don't forget to fill out the evaluation survey. That really helps us out in determining what webinars we might do in the future and how we can improve on our sessions now. So with that, we hope to see you again for our December webinar, or perhaps one of our workshops. So with that, we have come to the end of our webinar today. Thank you all so much for attending.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.